Hello, I'm Emma-Louise Coffey, and you're welcome to the Dairy Edge, the Teagasc Dairy podcast. We're bringing you the latest information, insights and opinion to improve dairy farm performance. On this week's episode, Head of Dairy Knowledge Transfer Tom O'Dwyer documents the challenges that dairy farmers and the industry have overcome in the last 50 years and the sustainability challenge that lies ahead.
I think if you look back over the last 50 years, you'll see a number of distinct phases, and largely, I suppose, shaped by policies and strategies at the different times. So if you go back to the 1970s, it was a very exciting period for Irish agriculture, including Irish dairy farming. And you had a period where there was a great focus on productivity and profitability. Through the 1970s, we had just joined the EEC, and there was loads of opportunities for Irish agriculture at that time. We then went into the 1980s, and some of your older listeners will remember a period of very high interest rates, and also milk quotas were introduced. So, you know, people looking back at the 1980s would probably say the 1980s were largely about survival. Following that, we entered into the 1990s, and we had reform of the Common Agricultural Policy. We had the introduction of the first direct payments, the introduction of different schemes such as the early retirement scheme, the forestry premium scheme, and REPS for the first time in 1993. And you know, from then until now, or the kind of the recent years, I suppose, the focus has been on income protection. Through various schemes, largely driven, I suppose, by the European Union. And then, you know, if you were to look now and look, say, for the next decade, what is the focus going to be on? And in my view, I think the focus is going to be on sustainability. And I think that's now the new focus for agriculture, not just for dairy farming, but for agriculture. And that's not to say that any of the previous items that I've mentioned, productivity, profitability, income protection, and so on, are going to be forgotten. They are still going to be important. It's just, in my view, I think sustainability is going to be the priority focus for the next decade.
And when we think about sustainability, there's a lot of conversation about the environment and the impact of agriculture on the environment, and in particular, there's a focus on dairy cows. Over the last decade, we've seen a huge increase in cow numbers, particularly, I suppose, following the abolition of milk quotas in 2015. In terms of, I suppose, with the sustainability hat on, and keeping that in mind, will we see a stagnation in terms of cow numbers, or would you expect in the next decade that cow numbers will continue to increase?
So a number of us within Teagasc have, I suppose, been discussing this in recent months. And the view within Teagasc is that the national dairy herd is likely to continue to increase in the coming decade. We predict a much more modest increase in cow numbers over the next decade, of the order of about 1.5% per year, which would bring cow numbers from where they are currently at about 1.46 million cows, would increase the national national dairy herd to 1.65 million dairy cows by 2027. So that's a much smaller annual increase than we have experienced in the past decade. Now, when you look back to the past decade, obviously the big event in the past decade was the removal of EU milk quotas on the 31st of March 2015. And since then, we have seen, big shifts in cow numbers on an annual basis, particularly in the year 2015 and 2016, a little bit lower than in more recent years. So the growth is likely to increase, or the growth in the national herd is likely to increase. And why is that? It's because dairying is generating a profit. In comparison to the other enterprises, it's more profitable. So people are deciding to switch enterprises, and those that are milking dairy cows are deciding to focus more on milk production. So they're dropping out the other enterprises, And that's in my view, that's a logical or normal response in terms of the economics of the different enterprises. That said, the increase in cow numbers, as you've referred to, has raised challenges for agriculture and for dairy farmers in particular, I suppose, in terms of emissions, water quality, and the continued loss of biodiversity. And dairy farmers are going to have to play their part in trying to reverse those environmental trends over the coming years.
And looking forward then to the next decade and this challenge of sustainability that dairy farmers are going to take on, what practices do you see as key for this?
Okay, so there's a range of practices, and I suppose they can be boiled down to about 6 or 7 key practices. There's others that will make a difference as well, but if we focus on 6 or 7. So firstly is continue to improve efficiency and productivity. So, continue to breed cows to EBI and generate higher EBI animals. That will help, okay? But I suppose just a caveat on that is that it helps in the context of maybe cow numbers not increasing. So once cow numbers increase, you have more cows and there's more emissions and there's more pressure on the environment. So the continue to improve EBI is the right move to make, and that's part of reducing emissions. Improved grass utilization is the second one. The more grass we can include in the cow's diet, the less emissions. That's borne out by research. After that, then we have things like increased efficiency of fertilizer use, and also a reduction in chemical fertilizer nitrogen use. And that's we're going to have to get our heads around that over the next decade. And Teagasc has research completed, which, if adopted, would allow farmers to reduce their chemical fertilizer nitrogen applications. And that's the use of clover, through the use of clover. So that's the next item then, is the incorporation of clover into our grassland swards. After that then, you have a focus on biodiversity. So, can you increase, say, the amount of biodiversity on your farm, because that will help as well, will help the environment. And the other 2 big ones then that I should mention are the switch of nitrogen type from can-based products to protected urea. So Teagasc is strongly recommending that nitrogen should be spread as protected urea, and that will reduce both greenhouse gas and ammonia emissions. So there's a double win there. And the final one then is the use of low emission slurry spreading. So that slurry should no longer be applied by splash plate and should be applied using low emission slurry spreading technology. Some farmers have adopted some or all of these technologies already. More have a long way to go. And I suppose that the challenge is to ensure that more dairy farmers adopt all of those technologies over the coming decades, so that the efficiency of production of milk in terms of its greenhouse gas emissions is improved.
I think you made a great point there, Tom, particularly in relation to, in research environments and also on a lot of commercial farms, we have seen that some and all of these technologies, in some instance, have been adopted. And I think, this has been showcased across open days, on our webinars within Teagasc, and even on this podcast. Each of the topics you've mentioned have been discussed. And I think this gives a lot of knowledge and confidence to other farmers who haven't adopted the technology just yet.
Absolutely. We've seen in our advisory work over the years that one of the key ways of spreading the message, so to speak, is to have demonstration farmers who get an intense advisory service from our advisors, and as a result of that then are ahead of the curve in adopting a technology. So whether that's the likes of grassland measurement or EBI or the switch to protected urea, if we can establish those practices on our demonstration farms, so be it the likes of Curtin's farm or be it one of the demonstration farmers that are dotted around the country, well then other farmers can see that and can see that yeah, that's being applied on a working farm, and with all the challenges that go about being on a working farm. That's very, very important, and it's crucial to the adoption of technologies across the industry. So yes, for sure, over the next while, Teagasc will be working to ensure that the technologies that I've mentioned earlier in our discussion, Emma-Louise, are adopted by our demonstration farms in the first instance, and then through demonstrations and through, as you've said, podcasts and videos and articles and so on about those demonstration farms, that the message can be spread to other farmers.
And looking then, Tom, to the Teagasc Dairy Roadmap, and this is reviewed, every few years. And I guess the targets that we set for farmers is readjusted based on current performance and what we see within top farms and research environments. A new dairy roadmap is set to be released in the coming weeks. What can you tell us about that?
Okay, so I suppose what we're setting out in that is that we expect, we've committed to paper our expectations in terms of the direction for the industry over the next 7 years. So we anticipate that the size of the national dairy herd will increase, and that milk output will also be higher. On a per cow basis, there'll be a growth, and then nationally, combining the increased cow numbers and the increased output per cow, we anticipate that milk production could be 9.5 billion litres by 2027. And last year it was just 8 billion litres. So, we anticipate there is going to be continued growth. We acknowledge the fact that there are challenges, and we identify both the research and advisory actions that are required by Teagasc and by Teagasc acting in partnership with other agencies to meet challenges. And a lot of those challenges are around the likes of the environmental footprint, antimicrobial resistance and the use of antibiotics on farms, animal welfare, the adoption of I call them the bread and butter technologies, better grassland management, better breeding and cost control. So we're not forgetting about, the technologies that we have been working with farmers to adopt over the last 10 years. It's just that there are new technologies now that we need to incorporate and consider in our dairy systems. So that's what we have in our roadmap. And as you said, we expect that we'll publish that at the dairy conference at the end of the month.
And talking through the dairy conference, Tom, in terms of wrapping up, the dairy conference is going to take place virtually this year, like many other events that can't go ahead in person. Can you give us some insight into the National Dairy Conference, what we can expect from it?
So this is the 23rd year of the Teagasc National Dairy Conference. Its first event was in 1998 in the Hotel Manila in Clonmel. And this year, because of COVID-19, we can't have our typical gathering for farmers. So we've decided to create a virtual Teagasc National Dairy Conference for 2020. And what that's going to look like, it's going to be held over 2 days on Tuesday the 25th and Wednesday the 26th of December. It's going to consist of two parts on each day. So at 10 o'clock on both days, there'll be a webinar broadcast with a live panel discussion. And later that evening at 7 p.m., we're actually going to have the Dairy Edge live. So Emma-Louise, you're involved in the dairy conference. So you're going to be interviewing some people both evenings. So we're delighted about that. It's a great, I think it's a fantastic coup for the dairy conference organizers to have the Dairy Edge live as part of this year's event. So details are available on our website, www.teagasc.ie. And we would ask that people just register beforehand, so to let us know that they're going to be joining one of the broadcasts. So it's free. You can join at 10 o'clock on the Tuesday morning, 7 o'clock on the Tuesday evening, 10 o'clock on the Wednesday morning, 7 o'clock on the Wednesday evening. You can join one of them of the broadcasts, or you can join all of the broadcasts. That's entirely up to you. But we do think that there'll be plenty of latest research and best advice shared, and there'll be opportunities for you as listeners to ask your questions of the various experts who are participating.
And as you say, Tom, the Dairy Edge is getting involved, and we're going live. We will have two farmers across the two nights. John McNamara on night one on the Tuesday with grassland researcher Michael Egan, and on the Wednesday we'll have dairy farmer Dara Colleen with expansion specialist Patrick Going. And I think those two farmers have a great story to tell, and highly productive farms, getting a lot of value from grazed grass, and very profitable systems, as well as farming in line with I suppose the sustainability measures that we spoke about today. We're really looking forward to it. And as you say, Tom, farmers can look on the Teagasc website, and there's a lot of links across the social media channels in order to register, and can register for one or all of the sessions that are organised. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Emma-Louise.
That's it for this week's episode of the Dairy Edge podcast, and my thanks to Tom O'Dwyer for joining me on this week's show. Tune in next Monday when we hear from Department Vet Michael Horn during Animal Health Awareness Week. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe to the podcast. You can listen on Apple and Google Podcasts as well as Spotify. And for more information, go to the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie. I'm Emma-Louise Coffey, and join me next time for your Dairy Edge.